So the thing is with the Project Tether series being on a perpetual hiatus for the longest time, and even me making several recent videos about the story and the characters over and over again. Thing with that is that as a claymation project, it wasn't supposed to be. Well, Project Tether. That's the funniest thing about I call it Project Tether. When the literal definition of the title is to be a connection that you project but bring back, and that was one of the classic forms of that definition. But yeah, so project is ironic because it's not actually a tethered title; it's actually literally Project Tether. Anyways, as a claymation feature series, it wasn't supposed to just be a one and go, and then nothing else comes after that for the rest of the time I'm a creator on YouTube. It's like, no, and then even particularly being a creator on YouTube with this series, as if I could have not branched out to anything else. I could have went the film and show route, like the TV and film route. Like there's like that's not so much of a pipe dream more than it would be a setback. It's just that traditionally and essentially, I prefer to make this kind of a project on YouTube because I know that even with the free reign of that or the other controversies with that, it doesn't have to be that way all the time. But yeah, with this series, it wasn't supposed to be like I'll just do it and then I'll never make claymation ever again. It's like I'll make this series in spite of other things I could do in the future. It's not that I want it to be an end all solution anyways, even though it may feel like I want that to happen. But it's like that's another story, but another different storyline. But it's just with Project Tether. There is a certain way I want to do it that I know that will make sense, and it won't be too much of a budget-friendly thing, but it will also be easier for me to do anyways. So, like, basically, for example, for the pilot, there's a way I could animate it where I don't have to use as many clay props or background designs, not even as much dialogue even, the way it could be designed for it. It's basically like the idea for the pilot is either starting with the black screen in like a dark area, completely pitch black, and then just have the eyes open out as if they're cartoony, but there's a reason behind that, I guess, a little bit. Maybe there should be some light in that room anyways, in the dark room. Either that happens as subtly nuanced in this thumbnail I have for this video. There is a black screen design. There's like a black room, pitch black room, where the main character's eyes are shown. And then as she moves around, you're able to see where she is with her eyes around the room. It's very cool. And even how she turns and blinks and all that. And she'll even talk at some point in that room if viable. But of course, I'm referring to Pale Hatchet at this point. But yeah, that's for Pale Hatchet's story. Is how she's in that, which is actually a prison cell, by the way. It's a prison cell, and she's locked in there because of an incident that happens in the story behind the pilot, which is where she could make up her mind on something that led to other catastrophes, and it was like that was supposed to be the first 10 seconds of the series. First 10 seconds, first minute, first 10 minutes. It's when you reveal the deepest core wound of your character, and as soon as possible, and maybe even create a vibe like some other shows do, that shows why people should watch the series, and that's that's more common than that, though. Like the inner core wound is not as likely to happen from what statistically I've seen, but that was the idea for that part of the pilot instead. Like if I did the indecisiveness part of the episode as the pilot, then maybe that would happen, and then the prison cell scene. But the prison cell scene is a very good minimalistic take, so that's why I'm thinking out there. But yeah, with Pale Hatchet's story in particular. Pail is the kind of heroine or villainess. I'm not sure how I'm going to my diet lately. I knew that I wanted her to start off as a heroine and then make up her mind about whether she would stay that way or become a villainess. Because in her mind, Pail wants to be a villainess, through and through. It's not that she doesn't know what it would mean to be the kind of person who knows that there are genuineness in her actions, which implies she's a heroine, but through her motivations wants to be a villainess for her own reasons, which can seem paradoxical for the most of the archetype for being a villain in the first place. Like most villains who even aren't or are self-aware, therein about being a villain, they don't have to see villain the way that she does, and that's fair to say, at least for that kind of thing, because everyone has a different perspective. But to define it in a different way, which seems like its own contradiction, it makes her more interesting, but also makes her kind of grammatically awkward. Because no one wants to have someone who doesn't understand what they're doing to be the main character, I guess. Because their motivations have to be resonate in some form to the audience, And if they're always if sometimes if the characters know more than we do, it's already forgivable because that's not common, but it's still forgivable. But if we know something that's flawed with the plot of the story, that even the characters themselves could be written to not know about, that could be cheap, I guess. But when I was designing Pail, I wasn't trying to make her someone that was so crippled that I didn't know how to run the story anymore. Because if it was a character-driven story, and I believe it would be at that point, either plot or character-driven story. I don't know how it works. So I'll try to get around to that. But it's just Pail was supposed to be crippled to the extent that she had ideal suffering, which is why I call it usually is ideal suffering, is like where she has the crippling of her protagonal ways in her character arc story. She's crippled in a way where she can still do things that amuse us and make us proud, but it's like whether she's a heroine or a villainess, but Pail would have to be crippled in a way where her weaknesses and her wounds are would make her someone that she isn't having to be like boring for. And like there were some very interesting philosophies I wanted to put into Pail that were obviously reminiscent of my own life story. That's probably one of the biggest things about Pail is that she's a lot like my soul and personality, but compared to even her rival, which either would be the hero or villain, Zesty Sonnet. And I can get to Zesty in another video if I need to, but for Pail's story, it's like Pail Hatchet doesn't have to be a villainess in order to still be a good character. I just thought that was like gonna be good spin-off things. To think that she's a villainess for a good reason, which doesn't have to make her a hero, even though technically she is a heroine for how her incentives imply about her, because she has a lot of genuinity and integrity in what she does. Either way, so it's interesting. It would make her a better villainess, in my opinion, for that, but I don't. So let me. I don't know if I should be talking about the character design right away, because I already told the thumbnail already reveals quite a bit, but it's like. But Pail's okay. So she has the windowed eye, the window blue and green eyes, light colors of each one, like light blue, light green. There's 4 squares for one eye. That's one eyeball, and the other eyeball is a half circle yellow with a crescent brown on the side, and that's like a sun moon concept. I just realized that it was like that. But that was the initial intention. It was supposed to be like really creative design, abstract designs for the eyes, to show that she was deep and kind of even sentimentally robotic or sentinel-ish. But basically someone who's deep and more to her soul than what meets the eye at that point. Because you're supposed to behold the eye of the soul, whatever. The beholder, whatever you know about that quote phrasing, is that the beauty is the eye of the beholder, basically. So it's like it's a more of a run on that, where she's deeper than she looks, and even though she looks through eyes that are deep, but it's like, so Pail has those complicated eyes, and her character design was supposed to be kind of like where her hair would resemble a glow spinner, which is kind of referencing a little bit indirectly to the Diggs channel. It's concepts like that between like other characters like Conroy and Pail themselves. Conroy's another character that used to be in the story, but I might try to find them where I'm there anyway. So that's just Conroy though. But for Pail's hair design resembles a clockwise spinning glow spinner, so it's like her hair will be pointing one way and the other bang will be pointing the other way, and I think it's like a brunette style. Most of those designs were brunette styles, and her hair is very pointy as if it's futuristic, like it's chromatic, but it's not supposed to directly resemble chromatic designs. This is like it's just for some subtly maybe magical, some kind of scientific reason, combination of both. She has these weird designs in her hair that stay stiff because that's just how she's genetically born or something, some kind of expression like that. But it's creative otherwise, so or a cartoon otherwise if you want to go like that. But like, and then she wears an archaic dress that looks kind of masculinated, but it's also like she also has those boots, sometimes a backpack or a messenger bag, some pretty cool designs on the blouse, and she looks like kind of like a heroine or a villainess in that regard. So a little bit more masculinity, like kind of like a 40% masculine, 60% feminine, as I would prefer, for a design like that, and not just for her character persona either, but So that's Pail's prop design that I include in this video as a bonus, I guess. But as for personality and story is concerned, Pail's personality is basically that, like as I mentioned before, she has the deeper core wound where she has a indecisiveness weakness, and it's basically where she doesn't know how to make up her mind about something, even if she knows that one thing resonates the most, she still wants to give other things a chance in her life. And that's something that I resonate very deeply with, because I've defined a lot of things like that lately, as that, if not for the longest time. Because that's what I keep saying, is that she's deeply inspired by my own personality and soul. So it's like, so even if she's not the main character at that point, that would be pretty interesting if that was the case. But Pail would have to be crippled in a way that makes her associatively and relevantly, maybe not always, but makes her, even compared to her rivals or archetypes, whatever, like Zessie Sonnet. Pail is already crippled by being indecisive, and she's also someone who doesn't have to, like, because she's complicated, she also often makes things harder for herself than she needs to, in an attempt to make things work in a way that she wishes they would, including the giving everything a chance to exist thing. So Pail's crippled in several ways like that. And her strengths would be things like her insight, which again are like me as well. Her insight, things like being able to accompany the connections that most people wouldn't even dreamed of or even have preferred, but when they don't prefer it, that means they miss out on an opportunity like that. And she's able to make shortcuts like that aren't cheating per se, aka her insight. So stuff like that. It's hard to elaborate much more about what her strengths and weaknesses are without giving up much more detail from the actual story. Show don't tell, I guess you could say. But yeah, that's a little bit of a snippet for that. Her story is generally going to revolve around things like being able to, depending on how the story is coerced, like how the genre is overlapping or whatever. Like the genre shouldn't be too much different from maybe an adventure or an action series, but like there might be romantic elements, there might be mystery or horror or a little bit of comedy, but basically it's an adventure. If I had to pick one, it'd be adventure. If I had to pick two, it'd be adventure and mystery. And so yeah, but as an adventure series, it'd be like she would explore certain areas that could make more creative or not. If it was a realistic world, she could still discover places like schools and fortresses and shops and nature bound environments, stuff like that. And with the creativity, then yes, I can make it more interesting than that. I can make it like different alien species, locations, and all that, but in the magical creatures or whatever. But it's as a fantasy or as a nonfiction style fantasy, if that even is a thing, I hope it is, because that's what I'm trying to apply with stuff like this. Like some shows I reference like this would be like, if I had to make obvious specific examples, yeah, it'd be like cartoons like Clarence or Kim Possible, where they have a nonfiction fantasy style setting where even if it's very silly and out of a character to even be realistic, it's still suspension of belief. So things like where you can still have fantasy elements, but they have a way to be proven in a way that, or not proven, but like given a light of humanity that doesn't make them too fake or too out of the blue. But you know, that's hard to explain that even I can make it. So you know, harder or even harder to complicate. But yeah, it's like stuff like that. For Pail, it's like, yeah, Project Tether's environment, it's like either I do cop out the fantasy elements and make it realistic so I can still make it easier for the story to function, or the fantasy elements can still contribute some form. I'm hoping that when I include fantasy elements like magic or gadgets or whatever, that it does contribute to the story. But in that case, if it did, I would include places like the species I made over the years, like Douglases, Scantless creatures, Capoids, Collins, Squalls, obviously the humans, the sprites, the other creatures that exist in those universes, multiverse dimensions, whatever they were called before. But that's already 5+ of them I know off the top of my head, and then monopods, whatever. Anyways, but if her fantasy element like that, then not only the characters themselves would be like that, but like also the laws of that universe, and also the how things are going to function in that story. By the core of the writing of either a novel series, whatever. Oh my god, we can only hope if I would get to that. But even the creative ways of, I'm actually let me get to this next thing, which is the camera angles, the dialogue, stuff like that. So the camera angles, I was gonna try some very creative things with the animation, the claymation setting of this story, claymation animation visual. I was either gonna aim the camera in very creative ways, not too much of the time so it doesn't distract you too much, but in creative ways like I've done before, aiming the camera in different ways. And sometimes, and the reason that's relevant right now is that not just the creativity of the camera movement, but what the camera focuses on, which I think is more relevant to what I'm talking about. It's like, for the story, the camera won't just focus on Pail the whole time. It'll focus on the characters that doesn't have to be too relevant to the story, but it'll still teach something that is relevant, indirectly relevant to what the theme is in the first place. It doesn't have to be relevant to the plot, be relevant to the theme, per se. That's a very interesting way to put it, and even complicated, but deeper otherwise. So, and then we have the story itself, which, guided by Claymation, makes it easier to tell that's an interesting story. But I'm not going to cheat with that all the time, obviously, so, you know. So with the story in mind, even if it wasn't a Claymation, what would make the story interesting? And that, I would tell you that the theme basically generally revolves around things like, if I had to pick one theme, actually, it would be that the theme is to give things a chance to exist, even if you're the only example and concept of that thing that didn't exist that you can work with. And that's generally what Pail is after, and to a significant extent, even that's even what Zesty Son's after, because Zesty Son wants to find a way to prevent coercion, I think, and then prevent situations from force people to do what they should have to do, even if they're necessary, even if they're considered to be recommended, because in his definition they don't have to be that way. And for Pail, it's like hers is a little bit more diverse than that. It's like I'm gonna try to be the best role model I can by being inescapable, and that's kind of like a little bit what I'm doing anyways. And some lesser sub goals for some of these characters were things like inside ripple culture, which again are relevant to what my own goals are. But I forget which character was doing that. It was either Pail or Zesty, but those were some of their core goals. Was like the preventing coercion for Zesty, and then becoming a role model through being inescapable for Pail and Hatchet. And it's like, yeah, not the best way to set that up, by the way, but it's still something I believed in. So I'm still confident about that nonetheless. So last thing I'll mention in this video is the structure of the story itself, and I think I wanted to write the ending first because that was the advice I got before, so that you could work towards something. Even if it wasn't the ending you went with in the long run, it helps you guide the story when you're developing the beginning and middle. So with the ending, if I had to pick an ending for the story before I knew how to begin it, I would say that this is not even a spoiler, a plot reveal or anything, but like, I wanted to have a sad ending, and I don't necessarily need to have Pail lose in order for this to happen, but if Pail did lose, it would mean that Zesty either obviously had to win, or it'd be a bit of a stalemate or something like that, or someone else wins. Maybe Zesty gets some sort of a sublime win or a subpar win, and then Pail loses, bland out or whatever, loses, and then someone gets the majority of the win, maybe. But so like if Pail loses, perhaps Zesty does win, and then the story ends in a way that you can still admire. But for Pail to win in the sad ending, it might mean that she gets something that she doesn't want, that resembles her theme, or resembles her wants and needs, or even differences of those. And the theme reflects that better by showing that she allowed something to exist that shouldn't have never existed, and it was still what she wanted, but not in the way she wanted it to happen. So that'd be how she wins in the sad ending. And then if in the sad ending she loses and Zesty loses, and no one else wins, then that would be considered a stalemate, but it would also be like, yeah, that's still kind of sad because we can still even relate to Zesty. So it's like, we can still find a way to relate to Zesty over the course of the story. So we can resent with him even then. But with Pail, we definitely get hit hard. So as we, you know, the best way that I could give the happy ending for Project Tether, and for Pail particularly, is if I find a way to make the happy ending something that doesn't cheap out the whole story. And that's generally what most people want with these kinds of shows anyways, is they don't want it to be like, they don't want it to be something where you have a happy ending because you're too afraid to give it a side ending. That's kind of, that's a very bit of a red flag on its own. But like, but give it a happy ending if you know how to make it good. That's usually good enough. Not only not out of fear, but out of love per se. So as I keep saying that phrase, but generally, one happy ending I can give the story is that Pail gets what she wants, but it's not what she expects, and that's one of the more uncommon ways to end the story, is to fulfill both her wants and needs in different ways. And I don't know how to be too specific about that right now, unfortunately, but maybe that would help not be that big spoiler for anyways. But generally speaking, I was leaning towards a sad ending to make it more effective as a story, but there's a possibility for a happy ending. So if I wasn't specific about that before, I'm sorry, but you know. So that's the story of Project Tether, And that's Pale Hatchet story particularly. See you guys in the next video. Bye.